So what this video is going to be is an informational video to show the average person on how he or she can resto-mod their own Corvette as a DIY with a few friends and a few parts and probably just a little more than a little money. So we'll get to the bottom of that and we'll show you exactly what we're going to get to. Hello and welcome to the channel. Today we're going to talk about a project that we have going on in the Full Octane Lodge, and that's our 1960 Chevrolet Corvette. This is a spectacular looking car. The design, everything about it is just cool 60s. We built this car in 2012, and back in 2012, that was kind of before the Restomod craze. So we kind of call it a semi-Restomod. You know, it has a modern front suspension with rack and pinion steering, coilover shocks. It has a 5-speed Tremec. It has vintage air, and all that stuff's all well and good, except it has period correct dual 4-barrels, the WCFBs. And every time we drive this thing in really, really hot weather, I can't get the new modern fuel to stop boiling in the bowls, and it just runs like garbage. So we had an opportunity to get a custom chassis for this car for about half price of what the retail would be. Even at the retail price, it would have been a bargain. So this is going to be what we'll call our budget build Restomod. The budget build Restomod, everything we're doing on this car so far that we've been able to acquire has been for almost half price of what the retail would be. And we'll go through a number of the things that we've gone through to get this. The reason that we got the chassis at a reduced price is there was somebody who put some money down on one, had to forfeit his deposit, so I was the beneficiary of a forfeited deposit, thus it costing me about half the price of retail. I haven't gotten all of the line items in the budget ironed out yet, but the basic items that it's going to cost us is the chassis. Normally the chassis, you know, and I'll call the chassis at 7,500 bucks or 8 grand, whatever it turns out to be, somewhere in that range. That is actually still kind of a budget build. The chassis is designed to take all C4 Corvette suspension components from a donor car. When you get the chassis custom made, you have to make the determination up front if you're going to have a Dana 44 rear end or a Dana 36. The Dana 44 came in manual transmission C4 Corvettes, and the Dana 36 came in automatics. The second piece that's going to be important is understanding, do you have an 84 to 87 or do you have an 88 to 96? 88 to 96 were about an inch wider in track width and had a little bit better items, especially in the rear. It allowed you to utilize a more modern braking system that used a clamp mechanism on the disc rather than having an internal drum on the rear brakes. I have opted to go with a more modern rear end and an earlier front end. I started out with the earlier rear end, tried to adapt the brakes, and it was really kind of a convoluted mess. So I went ahead and bought a couple of outer rear knuckles, some outer rear stub shafts, and now all of the modern brakes are going to fit on this car. So I'll have a braking system from a 1988 to 96 Corvette. Now this car currently has a 260 horsepower Crate 350. I've probably got about 5,000 miles on it since 2012. I have driven it a lot in the early days, and then as I got a couple of other cars in the collection that had LS engines, they were just so much more trouble-free. Get in the car, start the ignition, everything just works. It doesn't smell like gas when I come home. Last year, I probably got this car out 2 times, and that's really a shame because this is such a fantastic car. This is probably one of my favorite cars. This is one of my very first builds, full build that I did in 2012. So it'll always be very special to me. I'll show you some pictures. It was a Pink Floyd themed car, purple flames, jacked up side pipes. It was quite the spectacle to look at when we got it. And we kind of brought it back to its original-ish looking glory, but I just want to put everything new underneath. So we will be upgrading from the 260 horsepower Crate 350 to a 5.3 liter LS-based truck engine, which is an iron block that has probably 330 to 350 horsepower. We are also going to go from a Tremec 5-speed to a 4L60E transmission. I managed to come across a really good deal on a remanufactured motor and remanufactured transmission with no core required. So I got those, and so that will be going into the car. The rear end that I got with this whole suspension kit, it's a Dana 44 rear end, so it's a very stout rear end, has a 345-ish gear ratio in it, so I don't need as steep of overdrive as I have in this particular car. This particular car has a 411 rear, so I really needed that TKO 600 fifth gear. The project is probably going to take, I don't know, maybe a month or two. Once the chassis arrives, then it's the matter, it's going to be a bare metal chassis, so I'm going to have to do some test fitting, I'm going to do mock-ups, and we'll do some videos along the way to do those mock-ups. What we're going to do is, also the chassis we noticed didn't have any rear bump stops for the suspension, so we're going to install those. We're measuring to figure out what front runner system we're going to be able to use. I say front runner, so it's the accessory drive that goes on the front of the car for the air conditioning compressor, the power steering pump, and such. It will not work with a standard truck or a standard GM. You're going to have to get an aftermarket like a CVF or a Vintage Air front runner system. I have a friend who built one of these on the same chassis. He used the CVF, but he was unable to mount the power steering reservoir on the power steering pump, so he had yet another component in his engine bay. I'm trying to go maybe with the Vintage Air. We think the dimensions are going to work to where I'll be able to do the very tight Vintage Air system, which we have on our 63 split window, but we're going to do some measurements to make sure that's going to work. The plan is to, once I do the mock-up, then we're going to rip everything apart again. We're going to paint the chassis. We're not going to powder coat it because I want to paint it just from the mere standpoint. It's easy to repair if something goes wrong. Powder coat is awesome. It's very durable, but in the event that I have to make any further modifications once I start assembling the car, I don't want to have to go back to the powder coating shop, blow it all apart. So paint is good. We did that on our 57 GMC truck, and it has been holding up fantastically. We are going to paint the chassis red. It is going to also be converted from a monoleaf to a coilover. So C4 Corvettes were factory monoleaf. So you had one leaf in the front going across the car, one in the back. I wanted to have some more adjustability. I wanted to be able to change the spring rates. So we do have the ability to, I'm going to go with some QA1 shocks with coilover springs. I'm going to show you how to measure for that, for ride height, and pick the right shock, and that'll be in a future video. And we're going to show you what other things need to be done to the chassis when it gets here. Like you're going to have to drill holes, once you mount the motor and transmission in the chassis, you're going to have to drill holes for your cross member just to make sure it's in the right spot. That's the one thing that the manufacturer does not do for you. It's not a big deal. We'll show you what we did there. The rest of the project, once we get everything painted, we're going to put the whole chassis back together. We're going to put all the accessories on, put the whole motor on, everything that will allow us to lift the body off of this car and move it over to the new chassis. We want to kind of do this in a very minimal downtime standpoint. One other thing that you're going to come across is as we're going to modern technology with all of the electronic speed sensors for the transmission, all of the computer outputs, we have elected to go with a new instrument cluster from Dakota Digital. They make one that looks almost identical to the factory look, but it is digitally operated. It has a control module, and it does have a small LED for speedometer and things of that nature. The nice thing about that is, well, let me back up. We're going to do a Holley Terminator X Max, which will control the automatic transmission and the engine through a single computer, which is a very tight format computer. Comes with a whole harness to plug into everything, so it's a pretty much plug and play and auto learn, which is going to be nice. Additionally, Dakota Digital sells what they call a BIM box. It's a module interface that goes between the Dakota Digital instruments and the Holley Terminator computer, which is going to allow outputs such as oil pressure, oil temperature. It may have shifting, I'm not sure, but it will have pretty much all, and speedometer, so it'll have pretty much all of the interfaces that go to the cluster, with the exception of possibly a fuel gauge. Fuel gauge I'm going to have to run separately. I will have to put a separate tank in this, or a new tank that's going to have an in-tank fuel pump and a return line. We'll go into all that in a future video also. So that's going to be a wrap for this video. This is, again, just an introduction to kind of show you where we're going, what we're going to do with this, kind of where the car was, how it's progressed over the past 12 years, and what it's going to do in the future will be in the following video series that we're going to do. Thanks for being with us at the Full Octane Lodge. We hope to bring a lot more of this content. We know this isn't a project that every DIYer is going to want to take on, but we're hopeful that we'll show you that it's not that hard to do with a little elbow grease, a couple of these YouTube videos, and obviously a few dollars. So again, thanks for being with us. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe and the notification bell so that you know when another one of these videos is coming out. Oh wait, I almost forgot. Our legal team made me promise to display this disclaimer before we ended the video. Please take a moment to read it before you make any buying decisions.